Hey rockers! That's probably one of the most annoying yet funny sounds I've ever heard. Yeah, shout out to Gary in Arizona. He knows why. Today we're going to go back 42 years, man, to a concert that I attended, 42 years ago, May the 27th, 1982, and I'm talking about Ozzy Osbourne and the Diary of a Madman tour at the Prairie Capitol Convention Center in Springfield, Illinois. Wow, I'm getting all these flashbacks from that show because I was very young at that point. 76, I would have been 10, 77, 78, 79, 80, 81, 82. I was 16 years old, man. I had just turned 16 in that year. And yep, I'm going to tell you and give you the disclaimer right now that this story has to do with, well, those things called chemicals. Things you should not do that I did back then that I don't recommend you do now. But I'm going to give you the disclaimer because I don't want anyone being offended or thinking that I am glamorizing any kind of chemical sort of use. I'm not. I'm only telling you the story, how it happened. Just the facts, ma'am. Just the facts. And sir, and others. 1982, me and some friends decide to do a bunch of the Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds. You know what I'm talking about. We didn't do a little, we did a lot. Yeah, it's one of those stories, man, because back then we were really into the chemicals. Okay, but we were into the music more. And me and a couple of friends got into the Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds and headed to Springfield. Had a blast, man. The opening act was UFO. Legendary UFO, no less. And I've got the songs they did that night, not the actual set list, but I do have Ozzy's actual set list that I will share with you that he played that night at the end of my story. So we do the Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds. The Diary of a Madman album was released in October of 1981. Randy Rhoads, of course, passed away, March 19th, 1982. He was the guitarist and co-writer of the album Diary of a Madman, and of course the first Ozzy Osbourne Blizzard of Oz album. And then when that tour was going on, it was halted because Randy was in that tragic plane accident that was just unbelievably sad and so premature feeling and just anticlimactic. And yeah, you know, long live Randy Rhoads, man. There's another story on this channel about me seeing Randy Rhoads. Just click on the video section and you'll find it. Also, please subscribe to my channel right now if you haven't subscribed. Give the video a like and maybe a comment. When Diary of a Madman tour happened, we couldn't wait. And then we heard about Randy Rhoads. We thought, it's over. But Ozzy, he ends up hiring, Bernie Torme, I think his name was, to play guitar. He wasn't cutting the cake, apparently. Didn't last more than a few gigs. Then Ozzy hires, from the band Night Ranger, Brad Gillis to play guitar. And he was at the show that I'm going to tell you about. We didn't know what to expect because I wasn't really a big Night Ranger fan, although my mother was. She was always into the Sister Christian, you know that song. Sister Christian on the telephone. Hell, I don't know the words, man. Never mind. But I thought that they were a good band. I seen them on MTV a lot, but I wasn't a big fan. They were a little bit commercial for me. But I knew that Brad Gillis was a good guitar player, or Ozzy wouldn't have had him replace Randy Rhoads for a bit on that tour. So the band that night consisted of Ozzy Osbourne on vocals, the great Brad Gillis on guitar, Rudy Sarzo, the great Rudy Sarzo on the bass guitar, and Tommy Aldridge on drums, and Don Airey on keyboards. Now, just a little bit of info for those of you that don't know, or maybe those that just want to know the facts. Just the facts, ma'am, sir, and those in between. Tommy Aldridge, of course, played with so many legendary bands from Black Oak, Arkansas, Whitesnake, Thin Lizzy, the Pat Travers Band, so many bands. Great drummer, legendary drummer. Don Airey, keyboard player. Of course, he's been with Deep Purple since 2002. But did you know that Don Airey, as a keyboard player, has been a member of Judas Priest, Black Sabbath, Jethro Tull, Saxon, Wishbone Ash, Rainbow? So many killer bands. Don Airey is a wizard on the keyboards. But here's something I didn't know until recently. He played keyboards on the Blizzard of Oz album, and he's credited with playing on Diary of a Madman, but he didn't play on it, man. A guy named, I wrote it down so I wouldn't get it wrong, man. A guy named Johnny Cook actually played keyboards on Diary of a Madman. He's uncredited, and Don Airey is in fact given the credit on the album, but he did not play on the album. That's crazy. I just found that out a few minutes ago. I'm like, that's whack. Some of the keyboards on Diary of a Madman are just so unbelievably killer. You know what I mean? Just gothic in their essence. Just really spooky, classic Ozzy stuff, man. But of course, Rudy Sarzo. Whoa, I'm always hitting stuff, man. Get back over in your place, dude. My OCD won't allow this. No, I'm kidding. Rudy Sarzo, a legendary Quiet Riot bass player who I had seen with Quiet Riot many times. Of course, he was also with Whitesnake, Dio, so many other bands in his time. Rudy Sarzo rules, man. Of course, Brad Gillis on guitar. And that night, they had this great gothic set. I don't know if you've seen the photos from the Diary of a Madman tour, but we got down to about the 3rd or 5th row because we were kind of wandering around tripping balls, you know what I'm saying? And we, UFO, they come out, and the guys in UFO at that time were Phil Mogg on vocals, Andy Parker on the drums, Neil Carter on keyboards and rhythm guitar. I don't know if Pete Way was still with them because he left in 1982. And of course, Pete Way started the band Fastway. I think he actually left Fastway before they actually did the first album. And then he joined OZZY for a little while. But I know Pete Way also was in the Michael Schenker group. He also co-founded the band Wasted. He was all over the place. So that night, I can't testify to the fact that Pete Way was at this show, because I also know that another guy, Paul Chapman, is credited with being in the band in '82. So I don't know if it was indeed Paul Chapman or Pete Way that was on bass with UFO the night I saw them. If you know, leave a comment below. I'd love to know, man. But those guys rocked, of course. UFO did rock. I will concentrate on the Ozzy stuff first because I know that's what I'm here to talk about. Ozzy ruled, man, that night. It was just an incredible performance. The guy came out basically shirtless with all his awesome tattoos displayed, and we were, like I say, tripping heavily. And being 16, we were like all caught up in the whole Sabbath Ozzy myth, and just like we thought, this guy's so intense. And when you're in the state of mind we were in, and you're like as close as we were, like 3rd to 5th row, you were pretty close. I had some great photos from that concert, but they got lost in the 2020 Alameda fires. There I go again, hitting that stupid thing. I've got to get different props, man. Props to me for not hitting it and knocking it on the floor like I did in my last video. The band was stellar, man. Rudy Sarzo looked so cool. He's like one of the ultimate rock and rollers. Tommy Aldridge was on this big riser. It was like these stairs that walked up into like a gothic castle. It looked like you were looking into a gothic castle like in England or Scotland or something. And it was real dark. The set was dark. He had different little people, like little people. I can't say the words that you used to be able to say because it's not really cool, but little people of short stature that were dressed up with makeup and like little robes. They would come running out here and there, and I forget what they were doing, but we were like, what the hell? It was wild. I saw photos of these guys later, and they were so cool looking, and they were part of this gothic set that Ozzy had going on. Like Rudy Sarzo was on stage, and there's like a big doorway entrance around him made of these like faux bricks, you know, it looked like a big castle. It was just cool and smoky and dark, and you had Ozzy up there walking around shirtless, man. I think he had his blue pants and that red studded belt on that night. And he was walking around sweating. He had his eyeliner on. He just looked like a madman. Like his eyes were open wide a lot, you know. And you know Ozzy's famous for partying, so I don't know if he was loaded, but he did a stellar job because I remember him thinking, man, this guy doesn't really mess up. He was just awesome that night. And I do have the set list, of course. I do remember Brad Gillis had like a short sleeveless black leather vest on. And he was good. He was good. He was no Randy Rhoads. Let's just get that out of the way, man. He's no Zakk Wylde. He's no Jakey Lee, who some say is actually one of the best guitar players that Ozzy had. I'm going to stick with Randy Rhoads and, of course, Zakk and Jakey Lee. But Gillis did a good job. I have to give him props. That was not an easy thing to come in and learn as quick as he did. He really had to endure a lot of abuse from Ozzy. Ozzy was very mentally messed up from Randy Rhoads dying, and from what I hear, had been drinking heavily, like, you know, using substances, and especially alcohol at that time, to, well, decrease his pain. And I guess he was taking a lot of stuff out verbally on Gillis and wasn't very nice to Gillis. So Brad Gillis wasn't in the band real long. I'm not even sure. But I do know that the Speak of the Devil album came out, the double live Ozzy album, and Brad Gillis is on that. My grandmother, side note, my grandmother, not my great-grandmother, Virginia, bless her heart, she's no longer with us, but she made me an Ozzy cake that looked just like the Speak of the Devil album cover, man. It was so cool. And it had like little plastic bats that, you know, like were looking like black toothpicks that you stick in the cake, and the bats are sticking out all around the cake. And there was Ozzy on there with his complete tattoos, like in detail. And it looked just like the album cover. And I wish I had that photo from that cake, but man, I always remember eating that piece of cake because I wanted that blue tattoo of that demon or whatever that Ozzy has on his chest, I believe. I wanted that piece of cake for myself, and I remember eating that blue frosting, man. But that night, when Ozzy and the boys came out, they did Diary of a Madman. Now, when the lights went down and the show was beginning, what they played was eerie. I remember getting goosebumps. It was the actual Randy Rhoads' Diary of a Madman guitar parts that were recorded and played before the show started and led into the band coming out on stage. And it was such a rush because back then there was a lot of Ozzy phobia. A lot of Christian groups and far-right crazy, you know, religious zealots were coming out with pamphlets outside the concert. Oh, Ozzy represents Satan, stay away. You know, things are going to happen to you. He's possessed. He's a devil. The guy's a Christian. He always has been. Black Sabbath even always wore crosses, Christian crosses, because they wanted to protect themselves against the evil forces that came with doing music as dark as theirs. They met a lot of dark people along the way. They did some dark stuff. Yeah, they got into the chemicals and this and that. But they were good people underneath it all for the most part. When Ozzy wasn't using, he was known and still is known as being a sweetheart. But I digress. They came out and did Diary of a Madman. First thing they did, title track from that album, which is undoubtedly my favorite track on that album, and there's a lot of good ones on that album. Then they went into Over the Mountain, and Ozzy hit the note. There was a famous gig in Champaign, Illinois, when this guy came and played and came out, did Over the, and then he fell down, passed out, and the show was over. I wasn't there, but that was a show that happened, I believe, in Champaign, Illinois. I don't remember what year, but I feel sorry for the folks that bought tickets to that show. But he did Over the Mountain fine when I saw him, and like I say, we were pretty close, man. He was sweating like a madman that night, so yeah. Mr. Crowley was up next with the legendary Don Aries keyboards. Man, it was creepy watching that while we were tripping, man. Crazy Train was up next. The whole crowd was singing along. That was a huge hit the year before, and it was still very big in the hearts, and still is in the hearts of the Ozzy fans. Of course, Revelation Mother Earth. I gotta tell you what, seeing that song performed live was like being in church. It was like a spiritual thing, man. If you know that song, Revelation Mother Earth, imagine seeing it live with this incredibly talented band playing and Ozzy right in front of you, like, you know, feet away. And you can see the guy sweating and he's singing these songs, which most people can't sing Ozzy. Hate to say it, but I watched the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame induction ceremony recently. There was a lot of bad notes, and no, I'm not going to name names because, you know, hey, it's hard to sing Ozzy. A lot of people think they can do it, but try sometime. That guy has got one of the most unique voices in rock and roll. Yep. Revelation Mother Earth was a religious experience for me, man. I'm telling you, it was trippy. Steal Away the Night from Blizzard of Oz. That was awesome. Again, Brad Gillis ripping on the guitar that night. Suicide Solution, one of my favorite songs off Blizzard of Oz. They did that. That was awesome. Then, of course, that night, Brad Gillis went into a guitar solo. I do not remember the solo. I'm not going to lie. Then, of course, I noted that Tommy Aldridge did a solo as well, a drum solo. Legendary Tommy Aldridge. I don't remember the solo. I do know they were good because I would remember if they were bad. I would. But I walked away from that show going, that was killer. Then they did Goodbye to Romance. Again, another song from the first Ozzy solo album. Blizzard of Oz, a beautiful song with beautiful vocals and lyrics and guitar. The band was stellar. I remember Rudy Sarzo that coming up to the to the audience and playing to the crowd, being the rock star that he is, and just one of the best. I Don't Know was next. I love that tune. No Bone Movies. That was a good one that I don't think I've ever seen him do on another tour. I don't think outside of the first two. Believer, another one of my very favorite Ozzy Osbourne songs, was intense to see that night. Very special vibe with Believer. Then, of course, Flying High Again, one of the big radio hits that everyone knew the song and words to, I should say. Everyone was singing along that night. I mean, all eyes were on Ozzy. I mean, everyone loved Rudy Sarzo because all of us knew he was from Quiet Riot at that time. He had done so much later. But a lot of us kids weren't really aware of, of Tommy Aldridge and his history, or maybe, of course, Brad Gillis being a Night Ranger. But we knew Rudy and we knew Ozzy because we were all Sabbath fans. And the band delivered. They did 3 Sabbath songs that night, including Iron Man, and then they did Children of the Grave. And then when the lights went down, of course, everyone was doing their customary Ozzy, Ozzy, Ozzy. And they came back out, the lights came up. The guys came out and did Paranoid by Black Sabbath, and again, got this big gothic structure behind them. There was a unique set that was really, really cool. And I got to give Ozzy props. That was probably one of my very favorite tours by Ozzy Osbourne that I've ever seen. It was just incredible. He was still into the partying, but he was with Sharon. So he was, in the process of trying to clean up. He didn't get clean for a long time, I don't think. I think he's been on and off and back and forth. And, props to Ozzy, man. He's still doing it, man. And it's been a battle. It's been a battle that he's admitted publicly over and over. And all I can do is wish him and his family the very best. And, of course, I love Ozzy. The UFO band, when they played, I don't have the exact set, but I can tell you that UFO formed in 1968 in London, undergoing a few different name changes before settling on the band name UFO in 1969. Of course, Michael Schenker was with the band for a while, and I want to say rest in peace to Pete Way, who died in 2020. And I should say, I'm sorry, back up. Michael Schenker did not play, or did he play with UFO? Yeah, he did. And Pete Way was the co-founder of UFO, Wasted Fast Way, and played with the Michael Schenker group. I wanted to say that. But yeah, man, I'm a big fan of these guys, and didn't really become a big fan of UFO until later, actually. And it's hard keeping up with their different lineups through the years, with Schenker and all the different people in the band. Schenker was not with them the night I saw him, though. But they did We Belong to the Night, Let It Rain, Long Gone. They did No Place to Run, The Wild, The Willing and the Innocent. What a great tune by UFO. Only You Can Rock Me, Rock Me. That was another one they did that night, which I remember singing along to. That was awesome seeing UFO. I got to say it, man. Really heavy band. They did Terry, Making Moves. Of course, Doing It All for You. Too Hot to Handle, another one that's got some radio airplay, and I play it on my Church of Rock radio show sometimes. Rock Bottom, they did Lights Out in London. That's another great one, man. Probably one of my favorite songs by UFO is Lights Out in London, hold tight until the end. And then, of course, Mystery Train, and I said Rock Bottom, right? Yeah. It was cool seeing UFO. It was great. That was a great opening band for Ozzy. A couple bands from England. You got Ozzy Osbourne, you got UFO. But that night was particularly special because Diary of a Madman is one of the best records ever made. I just got to say it's up there on my top 20 or 50. I don't know. I hate these list things, but that album is very special, as you know, if you're a fan of Diary of a Madman. Thanks so much for checking out my story, you guys. Please subscribe. This wasn't the most interesting of stories, but hey, man, you got the rubber chicken, right? Thanks so much for coming to Bloody F Mess Official, and may the force be with you. Cheers.